My name is Martin Blackwell. I'm Head of Operations at the Business Improvement District and leading on our European project, Upcycle Your Waste. This was originally planned as a full partner meeting with all our European partners, led by the Dutch in The Hague. But you've probably seen on the news the current situation in the Low Countries, and unfortunately at the last moment they were not able to attend. So while we don't have any European partners, we are live streaming this, and it will be broadcast to our colleagues and recorded. So if you it's unlikely that you'll be caught on camera, but if you have a particular requirement not to be seen by the FBI or anybody else, do let the guys know, and we'll try and keep you off camera. So this morning is a follow-up to some work we did in the summer, which I'll come on to. But this is about working with our business community in the city centre and surrounding Norwich to make sure that we can upcycle as much of the waste that's produced as we can. And I don't think it's about trying to do one thing 100% better. It's about doing 100 things 1% better, if that makes sense. So it's about all the little changes that we can all do and make a contribution to. The exhibitors we've got here represent that in a way. So Tamara, over on the right-hand side, is an individual working on eco-couture, making individual products. And then at the back, we have Aviva, who are on a global journey to making their business go net zero. And that's what we've tried to do with the exhibitors we've got here today, to express some of those differences and opportunities. So a little bit about the BID. I'm sure most of you know who we are, but our job as a not-for-profit working for the business community in the city centre is to make the city thrive. So we promote Norwich through Visit Norwich. We yesterday switched on the Christmas lights and the tunnel of lights as one of the things that we do around a range of experiences. And we're trying to ensure that the business community has a stronger voice, and that includes Upcycle Your Waste. So what do I mean by Upcycle Your Waste?
We all need to consider
Here
the
we go.
impact of our businesses on the environment and to improve the efficiency of our operations. However, only 25% of SME waste is currently repurposed. We want to reduce your waste disposal costs and find new income streams. Your waste might be someone else's resource. Upcycle it. Get free professional advice on your waste, and we'll help you transform waste flow into resources for your local community. Be part of a new collaborative movement, a major new circular economy initiative for your city. To find out more, contact us today. And
obviously you did contact us today because you taken the time out to come and attend, so thank you for that. But it's a question of what is upcycling, because it's not recycling. Upcycling is to use or reuse discarded objects or materials in such a way to create a product of higher quality or value than the original. So it's not about turning it into something of a lesser quality. It means to create something from that waste stream of equal or greater value. And as I mentioned earlier, we're doing this with colleagues around Europe, in France, Belgium and the Netherlands, and we're working on this together. We're actually at the halfway point of the project. We've done a huge amount of research, not least going out to businesses and talking to them about their waste under the snappy title, "Can we stick our head in your bin?" And we did stick our head in people's bins and did 257 interviews with people to look at the types and amounts of waste. So the biggest one there is residual general waste. In other words, it doesn't get separated, it doesn't get recycled, it just goes into landfill. But these are, take food waste, 600 tons a year from those 257 businesses. they're probably 4 times or 5 times or more the number of businesses in the city centre, well, more than that probably, that we didn't visit. So this is just a snapshot to illustrate the scale, but if we got every business involved, then we would be producing huge numbers of waste streams and types of waste. So what does that get used for? So things like coffee grounds. We've got an example where coffee grounds are collected, taken away, and used to grow mushrooms on. And the really interesting thing about that is when the coffee grounds are taken away, they weigh a certain quantity. When they come back, they're much lighter because the mushrooms take out all the moisture, and so it's then cheaper for the business to get rid of the residue because it doesn't weigh as much. So what a business is doing is lending its coffee grounds to a business to use it to create something different. Oranges are used for cleaning fluids, all sorts of vegetable peels, wooden crates. In the summer, we had this event where one of the companies came up with an idea called Palatable, which is to take broken pallets and turn that into something which was actually quite beautiful. They used it for wall paneling and flooring, and it looks fantastic. So I mentioned the event in the summer. We put a circus tent up in Chapelfield Gardens and invited people to come working with Sync the City and the UEA. They actually bought a ticket and they turned up and they didn't really know what they were going to be doing. We just put them into groups, and it was really interesting to see, a group of people, which we're going to in some ways replicate later, with different experiences and backgrounds. So you put somebody very creative with an accountant or a lawyer, and somebody who's got marketing experience, somebody who could write a business plan. So you put those groups together in a random way and just see what happened. So day one was described as being like The Apprentice, where they had to work together and come up with a plan and look at it and think about how they're going to do the marketing and all those things. And then day two was like Dragon's Den. And we'll be hearing from somebody who's got some Dragon's Den experience shortly. So they had to pitch the idea to a panel, and there was a winner. They received some funding, and actually out of that came Scoop, which is one of our exhibitors today. That's now a live business. They've appointed a chief executive. They are developing a product, a platform to facilitate this. So we had great fun in the summer. Those are the judges trying to look like scary dragons. I think it worked. It's the only event I've ever been to. When we turned up on Sunday morning at 7:30, there were people waiting to get in. So that worked really, really well. So the Upcycle Your Waste project then, there is an Upcycle Your Waste project. It's got lots of examples on there, and we want more and more cases to write up and share with our European colleagues about how we are turning our waste streams into products and services. And there are products, new materials, platforms and services. We're looking at all these different things. But today I want to move slightly from where we were in the summer, where we were looking at what can we use these materials for. And the main theme today in our workshops, in our discussion tables, will be about how do we get the business community, which is a lot of you, on board to supply your waste, a bit like the coffee grounds. If there isn't a supply of material in, there can't be the upcycled products coming out. So how do we get the business community engaged with this to supply our waste? And it works really well with another project. We're absolutely delighted to announce that we've been successful in the Community Renewal Fund, which is a UK project described as being as a replacement for European funding. So you turn off one and you turn on something else, but let's not get political about this. But the Community Renewal Fund, we worked with the 2 other business improvement districts in Norfolk, in Kings Lynn and Great Yarmouth. So we're leading on that, working with them to help businesses put together a net zero strategy. So you can see how these 2 things could go hand in hand. So if as an business you want advice on net zero strategy through the Community Renewal Fund, Katia, can you wave at me? So it's Katia at the front here. And if you want to talk to one of our team about the Upcycle Your Waste project, that's Victoria at the back. Victoria, can you give us a wave, please? So they'll be around in a coffee break and lunch, etc. So, but without further ado, I'd then like to introduce you to Max McMurdo. So Max is a designer, upcycler, entrepreneur, and TV presenter. And we found out over dinner last night he lives in a shipping container.
Thank you very much. So, firstly, thank you for that kind introduction. I've been referred to as a lot worse. The Daily Mail referred to me once as Professor Green's disruptive tattooed hooligan friend. Now, I nearly took offence and then thought, no, that's brilliant. I like that. I'll get on to why I got arrested with Professor Green later on in the talk. So firstly, thank you for inviting me, basically to hang out with a load of like-minded loons. I think it's brilliant. And already having a little whip round this morning, I think the difference from what I've seen in upcycling over the years is fantastic. So previously, 15 years ago, 19 years ago when I started, I know I don't look old enough, it was just a load of creative people being rather hopeful that one day they might be able to sell something they've made out of rubbish. And to be honest, that's exactly what I've been doing for certainly the first half of my career. So for me, it all started in Bedford, 2 hours away from here, all East Anglia. Bedford is not a hub for creativity, it must be said. It's a bit sleepy. It's kind of the void between the creativity of Birmingham and the Midlands and London, and we get missed out for everything. So went to Bournemouth University, graduated with a degree in product design, and became a car designer, which was my boyhood dream. I loved sketching cars. I love a Ferrari. Became a car designer, and it was the worst job ever because 4,000 people design one car, which is hideous. You don't get any of your creativity across, and I felt really frustrated. So I did what my parents really didn't want me to do, jacked in my job, left my apartment, sold my little Vespa, bought a Volkswagen camper van, which is never a good idea in itself, and drove home from Cologne in Germany to go and live on my mum and dad's drive. And on the way, I filled my camper van because it wasn't unreliable enough. I decided to throw a load of rubbish in the back of it as well. So I found myself sort of camping en route with a shopping trolley for a pillow, and that wasn't very good. And I told them when I arrived on their drive that I was going to be self-sustainable. I didn't want to move back into my old childhood bedroom. I was going to sleep on the drive in my Volkswagen camper van, mainly because it didn't work anymore. And I was going to set up an eco-design consultancy. And I still, to this day, don't know what I meant by that. But it was the start of something that I now call a career. So the first thing I did was went to the local supermarket and sourced, I think is the correct term, maybe didn't ask too much permission, but I got myself a shopping trolley and thought, there's something in this. Eco-design, I'm going to get an object that used to be one thing, and this is the year kind of 2002, so the word upcycling didn't exist. People were either swampy, chaining themselves to a tree with dreadlocks and dirty fingernails, or they were people in suits driving gas guzzlers. There was no in between. There was no common sense. You either consumed or you didn't. So I got myself a shopping trolley and then thought, I'm going to turn it into a chair, sell it for £1 million and retire. Now, obviously, the fact I'm here today means I didn't succeed in that. But I turned it into what I perceive as a beautiful chair. I had no business knowledge. I didn't think about profit margins, profit and loss, didn't think about sourcing materials, none of that. I was just going to have to keep returning to my local budgeons with a hoodie on under the cover of darkness to source my materials. That was as far as I'd thought about waste streams. Turned it into this chair and then thought, ta-da! Then realised I had to sell it to somebody. So I took it to Camden Market, which of course is full of hippies who, they were green, they were into sustainability, but they also had £4.80 between them. And I hadn't really done the maths, and it cost about 200 quid to make this chair by the time you source the materials, you cut it, you fold it, you weld it, powder coat it, upholster it, and then these things like insurance and buying tools and all of those hideous things, realised that actually I needed to sell it for about maybe 400, 500, if not 600 pounds. So guess how many shopping trolleys I sold at Camden Market? None. But it was a fantastic experience from which I learned absolutely nothing, because I then went on to create something heavier, more expensive, more time consuming, because again, I wasn't thinking about the end user, I wasn't thinking about my customer, I was just being self-indulgently creative, going, look how amazing I am. So I made a sofa out of a roll-top bath, took it to Camden Market, sat alongside the shopping trolley chair, and I sold absolutely none. Great story so far, Max, well done. But then I did think, right, let's make something shiny, because I hadn't ever considered my customer, I just thought about me. And my mum, she often says, oh, it's really good, son, well done, but she doesn't ever give me any money. But she does give me the reassurance that I've made a pretty thing. But then I thought, let's make something smaller that's shiny and it lights up. So I got the inside of a washing machine drum, which incidentally takes about 4.5 hours to remove, and then it's usually dented as well. So wasn't even considering how easy it is to obtain the waste materials, or the cost involved in my hourly rate. I spoke to a fellow creative earlier who I'm not going to embarrass, and we discussed the creative person's hourly rate method of, meh, it's kind of free. I was watching telly while I did it, so it doesn't really count, which our lawyers and solicitors don't do they? They charge us £400 an hour, and if not by the 15 minutes, but creative people go, oh, it's only a couple of hours, it's free, it's fine. I enjoyed it. But this was a lot quicker, a lot simpler, and guess how many I sold at Camden Market? Still none, but I was getting there. And then it occurred to me, who in the room, let's have a show of hands, who in the room is a fan of the shopping trolley? No. Who gets Bathtub Monthly magazine? Not many. I didn't really there wasn't a fan base for the products I was creating, so I thought I'd created something beautiful, but actually nobody was ever going to buy it. And then I had a moment of genius and thought, people like cars, I like cars, people like cars. So I got an old V8 engine, had it powder coated, the most basic and easy of my designs to date, and suddenly I sold one. And who's a creative person in the room that's ever sold something that they made with their hands that was once upon a time just an idea in your head? That's worth £1 million, isn't it? It's worth more than money. You can't fathom the emotional feeling of selling something that was just a thought in your head. So I was on the track. And then I met these two horrible people. They're not horrible. Incidentally, Deborah Meaden is one of the most lovely people in the world. She gets very badly edited. I was disappointed with how nice she was. Basically, what really happened was my girlfriend at the time, she was fed up of coming around to see me living on the drive at my parents' house. And then when she came round, I'd just disappear down the garage and be making something. I'd come in and go, hey, look what I've made out of a baked bean tin. Isn't it amazing? We're going to be rich one day. And she'd say, no, I'm sat here with your mum and dad. This is really sad. So she applied for Dragon's Den and told me once I'd been sort of accepted. And I thought, I'll do it. I know I'm going to be that guy that they laugh at for 10 minutes, but it's publicity, and there's no such thing as bad publicity. But then they made me an offer. And I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's on YouTube. And my negotiation went something like this. Oh, really? That's not playing it cool. You shouldn't do that in business. If someone offers you money, meant to go, yeah, of course you want to invest, but I'm going to negotiate. I think I did say, do you want all of the business or just a little bit of it? And they went, all of it. I went, okay, that's fine. But what they did is they changed the way I looked at design. It was me being self-indulgent. I was getting a piece of waste I fancied, turning it into something pretty, and then hoping somebody would buy it at the end. And with their involvement, it was all about identify the customer, identify the scalability, how many of these can you produce, what are the costs, what are the implications, can you outsource production, wholesale margins, and all of the things that put the fear of God into a creative person. But if you don't think about those things quite early on in the design process, you're creating art. Although, incidentally, last year I did accidentally stumble into the world of art, which I'll talk about later. Can someone remind me to do that, actually, because I don't think there's a slide for it. But yeah, so it changed the way I was designing, and suddenly it became a little bit less spontaneous, but I actually started making some money, which of course is very important when you want to do silly projects, which I'm going to show you now. So after that show, that was on BBC, but a few of the runners and researchers said, oh, this guy's a bit funny, he'll do anything for a laugh. So they said, there's a new show coming out called Amazing Spaces. Once upon a time, Amazing Spaces and George Clarke didn't exist. Hard to imagine now, isn't it? But first series of Amazing Spaces, they said, would you build a small eco-space? I said, of course I will. I'll do something really simple. I'll get a shipping container delivered to my house. They'll crane it over the garage and they'll put it in the back garden. They'll put a few windows in the side and it'll be a lovely summer house office type arrangement. And it all went swimmingly well until the driver of the lorry said, oh, I can't crane it over because that garage is grade 2 listed, so I'm going to leave it here in the middle of the road. Goodbye. And there were 3 cameras looking at me, and I went, oh, this is scary, isn't it? What are we going to do? But when there's a TV camera pointed at you, you just do amazing things, usually quite stupid things. So me and my mate Gav chopped it up into 25 pieces, walked it through the house, through the kitchen, out into the back garden, and welded it back together again. And it started off as a 20-foot shipping container, but all of those corrugations open up just a little bit. So by the end, I had a 21-foot shipping container, which I thought was a bonus. But that was daft. That was silly. That was the main benefit of taking a shipping container, is that it's structurally sound. So chopping it into 25 pieces is not clever. And probably not that good for the planet when you consider the dust and the energy we use doing that. But it was a fantastic project, and I ended up having something incredible. And also Channel 4 then thought, he's game. We've got him. So then... They kind of stitched me up, because the next show was, oh, you can't see her beautiful face, but Kirstie Allsopp, she's challenging to work with, I think is the phrase. She knows what she wants, and she gets it, and it doesn't matter who gets between her and that thing, which was usually me. We became quite good friends, but we did a show called Fill Your House for Free, and this was the moment I realised, oh, upcycling is now a thing. It's on the map. It's on Channel 4. There's something in this. This is potentially quite commercial. And the fascinating thing is with TV, sometimes you have to be so truthful. So the chain of custody of all of these items, all of the items on Fill Your House for Free, we did 3 series, like 25 episodes or something, and every item had to genuinely be free. But we filmed in Scotland, and if the free item was worth £4 and it was in London, oh, we'd send a car for it. Like, that would be taxied at the huge cost to the environment and the viewer, but it had to be free. You couldn't get one next door that cost £1. So that was quite fascinating. But we did get to experiment and inspire, and it was actually brilliant. And we worked with some fantastic people. And then Series 3 was with Gok Wan, who is the most amazing man in the world. He was phenomenal, apart from he got us drunk every night and took us to a casino. That's where that story ends legally. Then we did a show with Kevin MacLeod. Basically, I got paid to work with all of the people I really admired on television. And Kevin MacLeod got an aeroplane, as you do, and they phoned me up and said, can we put this in your workshop? And I said, no. Do you know how big aeroplanes are? Don't be daft. And also, chopping up aeroplanes isn't as easy as you think. They're not just a thin skin of aluminium, I'm pleased to say, because when we fly, we die. But they're so substantially made. But the materials I started working with were just fantastic stuff I never thought I'd get my hands on. And this is why the waste stream is really important for a bunch of creatives, because we can sit in our offices and our studios and sketch things because of the rubbish we know about. But actually, once you start taking apart other stuff, you go, oh my goodness, who knew those beautiful struts were internally within the wing of an aeroplane? So that, and also the material on the front of that home office that I made, that's this wonderful honeycomb sheet that weighs next to nothing, yet it's incredibly strong. So experimenting with different waste streams is so important to push creative people. Then I completely lost the plot. I thought, right, I've built a 20-foot shipping container office. Channel 4 want the next big thing. I know what I'll do. I'll sell my home, buy a shipping container, and turn it into a house. And as we've already identified, it's the house I still live in today. And to be honest, I'm absolutely delighted with how it turned out. As you can see, it's a wall of glass, bifold doors. I live at the marina in Bedford. I bob around. My paddleboard now lives here. And it just gives me such an incredible lifestyle. And it cost 45 grand or something like that. Again, it had its challenges, things like condensation, things like thermal barriers. It gets far too hot because some idiot forgot to put a window in the back because I just concentrated on the view. Obviously, through air is a thing. But that was kind of my biggest project to date. I then got a weird phone call from somebody at ITV saying, can we pay you to go on holiday with Julia Bradbury for 3 months to Portugal? Let me think about that, yes. So we made a caravan and we turned a holiday home out there. It was an old cobbler's. We upcycled a cobbler's into a holiday home for less than £10,000. And then I realised everything I'd done to date was nonsense. It was really rubbish in many ways. Because Professor Green, the rapper, that man there who now gets me in lots of trouble on a daily basis, he took this photograph, and this was in Bournemouth. And this, for me, was when I realised that design is the most powerful thing in the world. He took that photograph in Bournemouth because Bournemouth Council were claiming they'd fitted an armrest. So that was a perfectly good bench, and they went round and fitted these metal bars to the middle of every bench in Bournemouth. And I went to university in Bournemouth. And they said, no, it's an armrest to help old people. I thought, is it? Is it really? It's to stop homeless people sleeping on your benches, because homelessness is an ugly situation that you don't want to acknowledge exists, and you're trying to shun it and hide it. So I messaged him and said, what are you doing tomorrow? And then about 24 hours later, I was cruising down to Bournemouth in my rickety old van and went past this G-Wagon with a load of wrappers, of which I don't really fit in with my cardigan, it would appear. And I met Professor Green in Bournemouth, and I basically redesigned the bar for Bournemouth Council. I said, it's a great idea. I think a metal bar in the middle of every bench is fantastic. You just got it a little bit, the proportions weren't quite right. So I removed their bars, and we got chased by the police and sort of arrested. And I replaced them with these slightly different bars. We handed out a tarpaulin to every homeless person in Bournemouth. We even did a little deal with them. We said, we'll give you all of these tarpaulins if you promise at the end of the day, when you wake up in the morning, we'll fit these new bars with wing nuts. Would you just take it off, reverse it round underneath, put it back, and then the bench is completely usable, clean up after yourselves. And they all did it. In the morning, we walked around and everyone sort of conformed to those basic rules. And the 35 people in Bournemouth got a much better night's sleep because they slept under the slightly modified armrest, we're calling it. And that, to me, was the moment when I thought, wow, design is really cool. How privileged are we to be creative people? You can actually change the world a little bit. And then I thought, okay, I've done upcycling. Let's take it to a whole new level. Let's go to a place where the waste stream is even more challenging. Please ignore the health and safety in some of these photos. Any photo of me in Kenya, I'm not wearing goggles or toe detectors, and I'm probably holding a machete. But that was a step even further when the waste stream is what you can get your hands on. Out there, you don't have B&Q and Wicks, it turns out. And I also naively took them a screwdriver, an electric screwdriver, and went, you're welcome, everybody, look at me. They said, what's that for? I said, for putting screws in. Screws don't exist in Kenya, it turns out. So that was an expensive paperweight, but a fantastic opportunity to learn what real scavenging, what real upcycling is all about. Because out there, like I say, the waste stream is minimal. Now, the really embarrassing part of the waste stream in Kenya is that if you go to the dump, where there's 6,000 families, all of the plastic waste has got an English label on it. So a lot of our recycling, I hope nobody in here is responsible for recycling the plastic waste around here. However, some, if not a lot, of what I saw out there was British waste that we say is going for recycling, and it's still ending up being dumped in developing countries, because that's presumably, or certainly was a couple of years ago, a cheaper way of dealing with it, which is quite horrific. Although we're going back in May next year, and we're going to be building things using that waste out there. So recently, I don't know if you noticed, but there was this pandemic thing, so I didn't really do any work. So I bought myself an ambulance, Exhibit A. It wasn't in particularly good condition, it must be said, but it was £1,500, and I thought, I'm going to upcycle an ambulance. I've got 18 months on my hands. And officially, before anyone asks, nobody has died in my ambulance, because you must be declared dead in the hospital by a doctor, not by a paramedic in the back of my now camper van. So there's no ghosts, before you ask. And this was a huge challenge, but it's a really good time, I think, for design, because we have 3D printers. We have the ability to produce recycled materials. It's a good time for upcycling in general, but particularly with a lot of the technologies I've been using, which are low energy LEDs, for example. Lithium-ion batteries are now fantastic. Solar panels are much more efficient, although not as efficient as I kind of hoped they were going to be. So I basically took this hideously ugly old ambulance and have converted it and upcycled it into something hopefully a lot less hideous, using reclaimed materials where possible. I'm a big fan of OSB, rough sawn timber, and utilising infrared heated sealing, low energy technologies, and it's turned into something I'm incredibly proud of, and it helps me relax, which is always a nice thing, and it's a good excuse to go to Scotland and watch the rugby on a more regular basis. So that is, I think, why I'm here. I've just spent 20 minutes trying to justify what I'm here for. So yeah, from my point of view, 20 years ago, upcycling was really hard for a number of reasons, because we weren't accepted, we were pigeonholed with swampy, and you had to tie yourself to trees. But also the main thing was, realistically, what you guys, I think, are trying to solve today, which was, it wasn't scalable. Sourcing the materials was very hard indeed. And in fact, the reality was, the bathtub sofas that I showed you earlier, I got asked by the Body Shop if I could produce them for every one of their shop windows. And of course I said, yes, cha-ching, happy days. The reality was, how on earth am I going to A, find the bathtubs, B, chop them all up. My workshop isn't big enough. Where am I going to store them? How am I going to get them? And in the end, I had to stop at 280, which was fantastic, because I was getting men in vans with slightly dubious connections and backgrounds turning up going, are you that fella who buys bathtubs for £100 a pop? And I went, yes. And I've got £1,000 cash in my pocket at all times, and there's no real receipt. I'm not entirely sure that the supply chain is what the body shop might imagine it to be right now. And there's still bubbles in that one. Please, stop stealing baths. But that was the reality 20 years ago. Upcycling wasn't a thing, so we didn't have the opportunity to team up with the big companies that are producing the waste. And in fact, I was almost forcing the situation and turning things that potentially could have just been reused as they were. It would have been better for me to leave the bathtubs alone. I actually think now, years later, let them be reused as bathtubs, and then at the end of their life, I was taking some sort of perfectly good bathtubs and turning them into chairs, which wasn't really the aim of the game. So I've learned a lot in the last 20 years, but it's only with the likes of this event where we can actually, somebody earlier, and it sounded ridiculous, but it's so true, this is like a dating site for rubbish. It's like the ultimate rubbish dating site, and I've been on a few in the past. But it's fantastic, isn't it? It's getting one person's waste. You know, the whole phrase, one man's trash is another man's treasure, is absolutely true. And actually, I think from my point of view, looking around, if I could have a directory of waste that's being produced, that would then inspire me to design products based upon that, rather than the self-indulgent stuff you saw earlier of me just making pretty things. So this could, I think, potentially change everything. And your designers will now be looking at the objects and looking, it's like the ultimate sweet shop for designers and upcyclers, isn't it? Looking through, going, oh, look at this, I want one of them, that's amazing. They produce 1,000 of them a month. We could make X, Y, and Z out of that. That's a really exciting prospect, I think, for the next generation of designers. So an event like this is super important. I should probably take my own advice and breathe for the first time in 25 minutes, shouldn't I? Now, I'm going to ask if there's any questions, because that might... oh, no, there's too many, and it's by grown-ups in suits. They're going to ask difficult questions. I'm going to pass you the microphone. Sorry. Art. Very good reminder. Thank you very much. So last year, it was a tough year, particularly in the world where I was writing books and doing television, because it all just stopped instantly. And I had a phone call from... I really should have had a picture of this. I got a phone call from Sotheby's, and they said, right, we're auctioning off a piece of artwork, and the artist has asked if you would supply 3 of your shopping trolley chairs. I went, yeah, of course. A couple of quid. That would be nice. And then... they hinted at who it might be, and it's for Show Me the Monet, the Banksy piece that sold for 27 point something million. I didn't get 27 point something million. I'd have bought a new cardigan if I had. And basically, I produced 3 of my shopping trolley chairs for the sale of Show Me the Monet by Banksy, and they said you can deliver them yourself. So I did, and there was this weird Bristolian scruffy man in the background, which I got really super excited about. It was probably the cleaner, but in my heart and head, it was Banksy. So anyway, after the event, they said, right, actually, you can either invoice us for buying them and we'll keep them, or do you want to just invoice us 50%, and it was a loan. And I went, oh, hang on, these could be worth some money now. They've been next to a Banksy piece. Fantastic. Long story short, during the toughest year of my career, I then entered into the art world. I had 5 art dealers get in touch and say, right, these 3 are now not product design anymore, they're art. And I went, oh, that's amazing, but I don't know what it means, because now we're just plucking figures out of thin air. And it felt awful, and I didn't like it, because I can justify all of my prices. We add up all the labour rates at probably £3 an hour because we're creative and not worthy. We add up the cost of the materials. We don't include all the important things like overheads and tools and consumables. And then at the end, we might double it, but we still feel really guilty because we're creative and we love it and we don't feel like we should charge anyone. And then I sold 3 shopping trolley chairs for £9,000 and went, oh my goodness, that's amazing. But I did feel very bad for about a second. Then I found out it went to Banksy's brothers in Spain or something. I didn't feel as bad anymore because he just got his 27.5 million. So thank you very much. That was the reminder. And I should have shown you a shopping trolley chair. Is there another question? Is that the reminder as well? You were both on Remindle. Or there's a question at the back. Are you allowed to shout the question? Oh, so none of the stuff I've seen in Kenya is from Norfolk. Good, I'm very glad to hear it. I was horrified by it, genuinely couldn't believe what I was seeing. I imagine a lot of it was American waste as well, but it's certainly English spoken language on the waste out there. And I imagine that's changing as we speak. I don't think that's going on quite as much. Any questions? Yeah, I suppose that's the key, isn't it? Because if you look in a bin in an industrial estate right now, it's probably going to look quite ugly initially, isn't it? And it's going to take quite a lot of imagination, which, although I've got quite a lot of that, if you chucked me in a proper industrial bin, I'd probably get cut and also not find it particularly inspiring. It's not like you're going to find the gems or the obvious gems. Although, you know, we've seen some old copper cylinders, which aren't particularly beautiful on display today, that look fantastic. So it's seeing beyond the waste. And I think getting designers to think differently, like I said, I've certainly been guilty of cherry picking the nice objects to turn into something, and they're halfway there already. Whereas if you know, imagine what you might find in the bin of a laser cutting shop, all the little circles they might cut out that come out of a product that they then go on to sell. If you've got a jewellery designer to come along and look at those wonderful bits of stainless steel, so it's marrying, like we've said, the creative people with the industry guys. Because no offence to the big boys like you know, we've got here today without naming anyone, but they're not probably the most creative bunch of people in the world, and it's them taking advice from the creatives, but the creatives also having an open mind and listening to these people, and it is just that conversation, I suppose, isn't it? But you're right, and I say about jumping in a bin and cutting yourself, that's always been one of my kind of stumbling points as well, is that most businesses can't just let you go in and have a rummage, can they, from a health and safety point of view? So it's allowing that to become a thing that's accepted and encouraged, and there will also be a cost for a big business to stop trading for a while, for somebody to escort creatives onto the premises. So again, it's facilitating it and making it not cost anybody too much. And then if we could have potentially, I think we discussed last night, some of the profit, even a small percentage of the profit from the final item, going back to the waste creator, then we're incentivizing as well, aren't we? Because we all want to save the planet, of course we do, but nobody really wants to spend a load of their own money and lose money saving the planet. So if we can make it work for everybody, which this seems to do, I don't want to jinx it, but it's kind of everyone wins, right? I don't think I really answered that question, but nobody noticed, it's fine. And even last night I went for a little wander and saw all the little market stalls and stuff. You've got so many lovely small businesses. It's kind of like the perfect place to do this. You couldn't do it in Bedford because the market just sells vaping things basically and apples, and that's it. So yeah, you do seem to have a really creative hub here. So it's the perfect platform, isn't it, really? Anything else? Oh, go on. Oh, the ultimate TV show. Well, I'm actually, potentially, definitely, but I can't tell you, we're doing a show on, as you can tell, I'm quite emotional. I'm quite stirred by the emotional side of things. I found out 6 months ago when my uncle died, he was the last of the three, my dad and my two uncles, that they lived in a tram near Edinburgh on the beach. So it sounds so far-fetched, but it's apparently true, that after the war, my granddad wouldn't accept a free house, so he got an old tram and converted it. And this is like, I never knew that anyone in my family had ever converted small spaces before. I thought I was the first. And they lived in a tram in Port Seaton near Edinburgh by the beach, and they walked a mile to and from school every day. So when I found this out, I went, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I can't think about anything else now. So I now am the proud owner of a double-decker tram that's still in Blackpool. There's a slight issue in transporting trams, it turns out, which you should probably think about before you buy one. And I didn't. And what we're going to do is we're going to swap the tram wheels for, apparently you can do this, swap it for rubber wheels, like car wheels, and then you can tow it up onto a trailer, onto a low loader, and take the route with no bridges. So I've bought myself a tram. We're going to take it back to Bedfordshire. We're going to convert it into as close as we can to my dad's home when he was a child. And this is why my uncle he was deaf in one ear because the condensation dripped onto that side of his head when he slept at night as a child. Too much information, possibly. And I'm going to then take it back to the campsite where they lived as kids. So anything like that, I just absolutely love. Where there's a backstory, and then all of my cousins, we can all go and stay as a holiday home in the house where our parents grew up. And then anything social, I love the fact that it's like my weird and wonderful world has all come full circle and it comes together. So going to Kenya, seems like a really weird thing that's non-associated with what I do, but I do construct things, I do teach design, so when I'm out there I can teach them lessons. So all of it sort of comes together. So for a project like that, that's fantastic. And then also, I've just bought a narrowboat by accident as well, because the man who lived near me at the marina, he had a really hard time during COVID, and he's been put in sheltered accommodation, and some charlatan came along and tried to buy it off him for 500 quid. And I've got a big friend who actually moves the tram for me, and he rather assertively removed the man who got wet for trying to bully a guy who's struggling. We bought this narrowboat and then said, oh my goodness, what are we going to do with it? We don't really want a narrowboat. It's the last thing I want in my life is a narrowboat. I live in a shipping container. So we're going to do it up as a really nice, peaceful place where people who've had a hard time, they can go online, they can book it out for a couple of days and just borrow it free of charge, cruise up and down the river, and it'll be just a really nice, peaceful place that people can enjoy if they're having a bit of a tough time. So anything like that. So the reality is, though, TV's a horrible thing. So if you've got a really lovely project with all of that sentiment and social responsibility, the easiest way of ruining it is to involve a TV company, because their objective isn't really that everyone lives happily ever after, it's that they get those shots, and they don't really care too much what happens in the process. So I'm trying to maybe move a little bit towards YouTube, where you can be a little bit more real and you can take your time and you can do things. So more often than not, when you see a reveal on TV, it won't work. There'll be no heating, there'll be no hot water. George will put his hands under something and go, oh, it's lovely and warm. That's not his accent, is it? You know what I mean, the George Clarke accent. There's no hot water, there's no heating, it's all cold. Sometimes we've revealed projects where there's no wall, there's just a linen curtain, because we just styled it out in the end. There's too much pressure on making, it's a profit-making machine, isn't it, television? And the budgets are too tight, the timescales are too short, they don't want to hire cameramen for too many days. So the reality is sometimes involving TV is a little bit dangerous, and particularly when it's a proper project, and particularly when it's something like upcycling, because you think, but this is real, this is true, we are genuinely saving waste, and if you hurry me too much, we're going to miss the objectives. In fact, I fell out with Theo Paphitis because he got prices, this is genuine, he got prices to make faux shopping trolley chairs in China in a sweatshop. And I went, oh, wow, that's amazing. You've missed everything. Like, you invested in this business and then you did that. That's phenomenal, because it was just all about the profit margins. So we've got to protect what we're doing as well and keep it as true as possible. Yes, we all need to scale up and become a little bit more savvy when it comes to making money and not be shy of making a profit. However, TV is a bit of a dangerous animal in that respect. And creative people and TV don't go hand in hand at all. They are the polar opposite of each other. So hopefully none. Hopefully I won't do TV, but I'm sure I will. I'm going to do the tram just because it's a wonderful story as well. And it does inspire people. That's the way I get around it in my head, is that if a 14-year-old version of myself is sat at home feeling really disengaged, doesn't get on with academia, and they sit there and go, oh my goodness, I'm going to build some crazy stuff and hopefully make a living out of it and become an engineer or a designer and study design, then that makes me happy. So there are positives and negatives, he says. Any more questions? Yes. Well, because I'm really old, when I went to university, one of my core subjects was built-in obsolescence. We were taught to design things to fail so people would replace them. That's amazing. That was like the late 90s. So I don't know what the current, I haven't revisited my course to see what the modules now are, but you would like to think that one of them is considering the materials that you're using, and you're shaking your head like, nope, they're really not. No, you'd imagine that should be in the curriculum now, that when you're designing something, is there an existing item you could be utilising, repurposing and upcycling rather than manufacturing from new, but it's not. Maybe that should be a thing. Is that our new thing that we're going to fight? Yeah, but that's great. Yeah, the education of teaching young designers. I mean, when I started designing cars, you would fuse plastic and metal together without any consideration for the recyclability of it at the end of its life. Now, that has moved on a long way. So even when you are in the automotive world, which has moved on with, electric vehicles and hydrogen and whatever, but even recyclability. So at the end of, when we did the bathtub chairs, in fact, that was one of the big questions for the body shop was, these look fantastic, they're clearly upcycled items, but if you use a chemical-based 2-pack paint, then that's more durable, but equally we're contaminating the cast iron and the enamel and stuff. So it's the recyclability as well. So there's so many facets to eco-design. It's not just, here's an old thing and I've done some stuff to it, now it's really pretty. There's a lot of different layers to that as well, which I think we do need to educate in schools about. Oh, hello, this is going to go on all day. Do I get paid by the minute? Hang on. Yeah.
Can I ask about, it's continuous processing in the circular economy. So when we've upcycled something, presumably we're going, in the future going to have to upcycle something we've upcycled. So your thoughts around that in terms of, I don't know, one of your bathroom sofas, where do we go next? Is that a challenge for us?
I think it is, and like we've just said, I think the processes we're using. So from the shopping trolley point of view, the best way for me to coat that is powder coating in terms of its durability and its second life, but that also stitches it up a bit when it comes to its third life, because then you have to do a lot of shot blasting to then remove that. So should we be thinking about, again, the recyclability of the products we're upcycling for the third life, because we don't want to ultimately be contaminating a really good material. Although, you know, they're already electroplated and then powder coated. So I think that's part of it is, yeah, let's upcycle something once. But then when we're upcycling something, is it repairable? You know, how many of these little white goods like toasters and kettles do we now buy that you can't actually repair? There's no access to replace component parts. You look under the engine of a car and you think, oh, I don't know how to replace a spark plug on a modern day car, particularly because they're electric. But, you know, you can't, there's no maintenance schedule. You can't actually access the changing a fuse. Like how many people my age, I've got friends who studied product design at university who can't change a fuse. So designing something for maintenance and repair is key as well, which again, I'm not sure if they're really doing that in universities, colleges and schools. I keep looking at you like you're the oracle. I don't even know if you're a teacher. I'm assuming you are.
What's your best example of a small-scale upscaling rather than an Air France jumbo? What's the best story you've got of a small-scale item that you've recycled?
Oh. That's a really good one. I suppose I just like any innovative design of flat pack. I think flat pack is fantastic as well, and that's anybody can at home with a jigsaw, they can cut out their own flat pack stuff. So I did a product called Bend the Bin. I'll keep moving around just to confuse the cameraman. I did a product called Bend the Bin, and I'm working with IKEA at the moment as well, actually, because I think flat pack design is fantastic, and that's you don't need mold tools, you don't need specific workshop or garage. So, and that's just 3 bits of timber, chop it out with a jigsaw, and that's just a little waste bin that holds carrier bags, for example. I think if people are getting into upcycling, I always say start with a dining chair, because you get lonely sets of 3 dining chairs in every charity shop, don't you? As soon as one dining chair breaks, nobody wants the other 3, because it has to be a set of 4, weirdly. So I always say go to a charity shop, buy a 10-quid dining chair that's upholstered, and then take it apart. And that's half the battle, learning how the fobs attach and learning how it's upholstered. Take it apart and then give it a lick of paint, sand it back, give it some oil, do whatever, re-upholster it. I think that's a really nice, because to be a good designer, you have to be really average at loads of things. So I'm not the best welder, upholsterer, woodworker. You can't be. You've got to be able to take a step back and appreciate all of the design processes, all of the manufacturing techniques, and know enough about each of them that you can work with somebody and you can design it for manufacture. But if you become the best at everything, you'll end up being a TIG welder. And my mate's a much better TIG welder than me. I'd rather pay him to do it. So keeping it simple, something like a dining chair if somebody really wants to get into it, or working with smaller items, and probably, following today, go and find that little thing that I've made up in my head that's in some metal worker's laser cutter's bin. Go and find that waste item, and then the processes. I think we were talking earlier about the lovely copper stuff. I've gone on about that a little bit, haven't I? Apologies for all the shout-outs. But keeping the process simple as well. You don't need specialist tools. You don't need huge upfront investment, because it's all well and good saying I'm going to make a shopping trolley chair, but there's a lot of processes and specialist equipment required for that. So keep it simple. Do something that's hands-on and quite manual. Any more questions? Oh dear, that's never a good start, is it? Sorry for asking this, but... Yeah. Yeah, and I think we're all worried about that probably, aren't we? The reality of this situation, and can, 50 people in a room in Norwich actually change that? Weirdly, I think we can, though, because it's not with shopping trolley chairs. I keep picking on myself, it's the easiest thing to do. But compostable coffee pods, that suddenly you go, oh, hang on, is that a thing? That's amazing that we can produce items like that, because that is some serious volume. And imagine if somebody like Nespresso then take that on. That is genuinely diverting tons and tons and tons from landfill, isn't it? So I think it's thinking differently. It's not being as blatant as I've been sometimes. I don't mind that I've done that because it is hopefully a little bit inspirational, but it's the reality of the situation is diverting the tons and looking at composting and packaging. I love plastic. There's a thing you never thought you'd see said today. But plastic in itself is genius. Think how many syringes that we've produced to save lives. And some of them are single use as well. It's the misuse of plastic, isn't it? And the ridiculous... We're going to look back on the last 50 years in the future and go, you did what? That's amazing. How stupid were you? But at the time, it didn't feel stupid. Packaging food so it lasted longer. It was a sort of a natural progression. We've realised now, but I think we can change that. But it is going to be events like this, and I'm not just saying that to be nice. Genuinely, me working on my own in a shed, creating beautiful stuff for Banksy. I don't know if I've gone on about it, but I worked with Banksy. It wasn't him, it is the cleaner. But that's not going to change the world. But stuff, linking up the waste producers with the creative people to come together, that weirdly hasn't happened before. Why has this not happened before? Because this is the obvious solution, isn't it? And I think we have to make it financially viable. I don't think we can rely on handouts and support all the time. But there's no reason why it can't be. If we can save the waste producers money genuinely by, was it taking the coffee grounds away and removing the water from them, so when they bin them, they're actually a third lighter or whatever it might be, they're making or certainly saving money, and somebody at the other end is going, I can grow the best mushrooms in town. That was weird, a bag of... anyway, so I think it can work, but it has to work commercially, doesn't it? We can't just constantly say, oh, you can either make money or be like Swampy. Again, I'm not suggesting you like Swampy. It can be both. I think it can be profitable, and I think some of the items we've seen in the room today are exactly that. And its technology is going to help as well, like the QR codes that we saw earlier. You can identify what's in a bin. I think we had a conversation earlier, you could almost have a little code embedded in every piece of plastic and trace its journey around the world. So technology is going to make that more feasible as well, I think. It's a good time, I hope. I really hope. Maybe we all just hope. Any more questions that I might know the answer to would be lovely. Max, can you fix the world? Yeah. If not, I'm not supposed to, but I'm just going to hang around all day. So basically free coffee, pastries, and a load of eco-warriors. I'm in. So thank you for listening, and I hope the rest of the day is productive.
Thank you, Max. That was generally inspirational. It's made us all think. And, I think, as I said at the beginning, it's not about doing one thing 100% better. It's about doing 100 things 1% better. And we do all have a role to play in that. So we've looked at one or two case studies. I'll just give you a couple more. One from our colleagues in the Netherlands, Abellio, which is the Dutch National Railway, happened to also run Greater Anglia here in Norfolk. But in the Netherlands, they collect their plastic bottles from train journeys, and they're taken away and processed into belts for your trousers, and then sold back to the railway as part of the staff uniform. So, I like that as an example. Here in Norwich, we have a local working group that's been helping me pull some of this together, and it includes Planet Pizza. And what they've done is they were buying in packing materials because they ship their pizzas all over the country. But all their materials, food materials, ingredients came in boxes, and they realized, hang on a minute, and they bought a machine to turn their delivery boxes into packing materials, and it's saving them £200 a week. So actually that material doesn't have to go off anywhere to be upcycled or reprocessed. So what we're trying to do, and I'll come back to this when we come back after coffee, is to find ways in which we can collectively work together to make the best ecosystem, to look at how the materials that are produced left over, and let's maybe stop calling it waste. It is a resource, it is a material. How can that be reused and upcycled, and from one man's waste to another man's resource? What was the phrase you used? One man's rubbish is whatever. Trash to treasure. Yeah, okay. So what we're going to do next is show you a short video which was pre-recorded, I'm afraid. We were expecting to have a delegation from our European partners here, but as I may have said, the situation in the Netherlands is not good at the moment. There is a national lockdown. They can't attend, but they have recorded a message for us, an interview I did yesterday, because one of the outcomes from our Upcycle Your Waste project is an academy, training online, short modules, and without further ado, I'm going to press the button and play you a short video. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Jan Budestein, Director from Green Biz Eimond, together with project partner OD Eimond. They're involved in the capacity building, and you created an academy for the partnership. So why did you create the Upcycle Academy?
Well, we are gaining a lot of knowledge during this project for Upcycling Your Waste, and we want to preserve it and share it with the partners, and for the few coming years that everybody can learn from our project. Besides that, we also want to create a level playing field for the partners when they are starting, the SMEs that are starting, that they all have some kind of basic knowledge, and that's also very important. And so I think that's important for us to create the academy.
So who do you think might benefit from the academy?
Well, I think lots of parties, almost everybody can join it and benefits from it, because we have different levels of studies, materials, and so everybody can join and cherry pick whatever they want to use from the academy. And well, for example, entrepreneurs who wants to start, they can join in and do the animation films by having a little bit of knowledge and what's it all about. And besides, there's also employees of the SMEs who are really involved in it. They can learn and start, and also civil servants from government, local governments. They can also start a basic knowledge of it. And also, of course, we have also some MOOCs, and they will be able for students and other people who are really eager to learn more about the subject. And I'll tell you on later on, maybe.
Okay, so this is all free, which is really good news. So what exactly have you created?
It's what we have created is a online platform, and accessible for everybody, everywhere, anywhere, anytime. That's, I think, quite important, and it's also in 3 languages, English, French, and Dutch, for all the parties which are joining the party. The platform has animations, it has MOOCs by the TU Delft, and also some modules which we made ourselves. And the modules, the animations, they are accessible without any registration, because there's a very short information box. And the MOOCs, they are delivered by the TU Delft, free of charge also, but you will be redirected to the TU Delft, and you have to register over there, but they will be accessible for everybody. And the modules we made ourselves to gain access to it, you have to register, and that gives also the possibility afterwards to give people a certification, or when you have done all the modules with good results.
So Eric, tell us a bit more about some of the subjects that are covered.
Well, we do have 4 modules in our own course, and that's what and why of circularity, in which we, we explain what it is and why it's important for people to join. And the next one is resources and production, and it's mainly about design. When it all starts with a good design, so we don't have to recycle anymore or upcycle anymore. And then we do have the module waste legislation, which of course the legal aspects of all that's very important. And the last one is reducing waste and impact. So that's more the step-by-step to the practical approach of the project. So that's about it for our own modules. So actually we hope a lot of people will use it. So a lot of gain of the work we have done.
Thank you, Eric. So just one thing I think it's important, how do people find it?
They will find it on the internet website of Upcycle Your Waste.
Yeah.
And we do have a on the how do you call it, in top of the website.
Yeah.
You will find the platform Academy button, and you can access.
So if everybody goes to www.upcycle your waste, they'll find it.
Yes, that's right.
So fantastic. So thank you very much, and I'm sure after this we'll get lots of people going on doing some of these short courses. Some of them last less than an hour, so they're easy. I've had a look myself, so they're easy to access. So you've done a great job in pulling this together. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. No problem.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So just before we move on to the coffee break, I need to apologize to Jan for calling him Eric, because there are 2 Buddhistines, and I got them mixed up there at the end. So sorry about that, Jan. So they are watching, they are live streaming, so I had to get that apology in. So what we're going to do now is break for coffee. So I've changed the order slightly, and when we come back from coffee, we're going to look at the why are we here, which were those yellow sticky notes. So we're now going to break, just check the time, is 5 past 11. So if we break for 25 minutes and come back at 11:30, I think we'll be able to start the process of the discussion slightly early and maybe get you away slightly early. We've made up some time, but I think so if we have 25 minutes for coffee now, do go around and talk to the stands, including the ones at the front here. And as I said, my colleagues Katia and Victoria are happy to talk to you about this project and the Community Renewal Fund. So break for coffee, back here at 12:30, please. Thank you very much.